Welcome to the Colts Squad Show. I'm your host, Derek Schultz, and guys, I'm in that dark place again.
And I'm Zach Hicks, and I'm joining Derek in that dark place. I'm just ready to stop talking about quarterbacks, so let's get it all out of our system tonight.
And I'm Jake Arthur, and the Colts claim that Anthony Richardson is Mr. Right, just not Mr. Right now.
This is Alan Pickett, and I guess it's the Jones Show.
Colts Nation, rise up. Colts Nation, rise up. It's the Colts Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything Indianapolis Colts every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Circle City, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. It's time to squad up. The Colts Squad Show starts now.
Welcome to the Colts Squad Show. I'm your host, Derek Schultz, here on the Locked On Colts Network. I've been a sports talker in Indianapolis for almost 2 decades. I'm joined by a man who left Notre Dame as the program's all-time leading rusher and a successful NFL career with the Oilers, in Alan Pinkett. And the rest of the squad, you everydayers know, Zach Hicks and Jake Arthur from Locked On Colts, are eyes, ears, boat shoes, sandals on the ground all season long for the team. Tonight, unfortunately, it's quarterback central again. I don't think it's any secret that even a day later, the decision, if you will, at least for the Colts, between Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones has been made and is still being dissected, discussed, analyzed, the whole deal. We'll continue to do so now that we've had 24 full hours to kind of simmer on it. And obviously, Alan and I will be discussing it for the first time. Zach and Jake had their show last night to kind of give their immediate reaction. We'll talk about not only in the scope of this year of what it means for the Colts, but is it over for Anthony Richardson? Not as an NFL quarterback, but his time in Indianapolis. We'll discuss that. Does this actually put more pressure on Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard? I thought Jake had a very interesting thing to say about that and a very interesting take on Locked On Colts yesterday. So you everydayers probably know already what was said there, but I wanted to bring in the group to discuss that because I think that's an interesting way to look at this. And then finally, we will actually talk about the non-quarterback positions. Saturday is a throwaway game for the most part against Cincinnati because nobody in the 2 deep is going to play, but there are a lot of jobs that are still on the line as it's the preseason finale and the last kind of time to show yourself before roster cutdown days last week. So we'll conclude with that coming up on the show. Guys, we all know by now the decision that has been made. It's Daniel Jones for the Colts as QB1. I guess I'll start with this. Jake, do you believe that this decision was more about Anthony Richardson or more about Daniel Jones for the Colts at the end of the day?
I think it was mostly about Shane Steichen. Really, I think Shane just wants somebody to do exactly what he wants within the system. I think he wants to trust himself as a play caller and have someone execute exactly what he's asking. With Anthony, you have the ups and downs. You have to still rely on the, getting him to where he needs to be developmentally before the snap, after the snap, not relying on the big play all the time. Whereas with Daniel Jones, there's no pizzazz, but he's probably going to do exactly what Shane asks him to do, even if it's unspectacular. So at the end of the day, I really think it's about Shane banking on his ability to get the most out of an offense, just with a non-scoring point guard at the helm, essentially, with Daniel Jones.
What did you think, Zach, about whether it's a Steichen thing? Like, let's just do the whole pie chart here. So you're giving a slice of the pie to each of the Colts decision makers here, or I guess each of the factors here. Daniel Jones's play, Anthony Richardson's play, just Shane, as Jake said, banking on Shane.
Yeah, I think most of it does come down to ultimately to Shane, as Jake said there, just in terms of, again, he trusts his system. He trusts the playmakers in the system and just the roster that they have built to be a team that doesn't need a superstar quarterback to be competitive this year. Just needs a guy who will get the ball out of his hands where it needs to go, who can do the proper blitz reads, who can do the proper protection calls, especially with the young center in front of him. I think that's an underrated aspect of this equation as well. But I think that it's Shane really betting on himself. And if I had to put any kind of degree of factors for Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson, I think most of it would just come down, I guess, to Richardson's last year performance. Not really this camp performance this year, because as Jake has kind of said a couple times on Locked On Colts the last 2 days, was there really anything that Richardson could have done this offseason in Shane Steichen's eyes to win back the graces of that starting job after what happened last year? Because last year, look, by all accounts, was a disaster for Anthony Richardson. He regressed in his play on the field. There was the benching. There was the tap out. There was a lot of things that would lead a coach like Shane Steichen to say, look, I don't think you can operate my offense. And then they go out there and they get just a veteran who knew what he had to do to win the job. I mean, it was clear from day one, Daniel Jones had a plan for this offseason. And that plan this offseason was, I'm just going to complete some passes in camp. I'm just going to make sure that the ball is getting to receivers' hands. I don't care if I'm throwing 2 passes past 10 yards per practice. Like, as long as the ball is getting out of my hand, it's moving the sticks, and I am having a perfectly adequate day every single day with no ebbs and flows, that's probably enough to win me this job. And I think that was the standard that Richardson had to compete with. Like, there was probably an outside chance he could win this battle if he came in and did what Daniel Jones was doing, but he kind of just came in and was a slightly better version of the Anthony Richardson that we've seen. And that wasn't good enough for what Shane Steichen was looking for. So to fully answer your question, I think most of it comes down to Steichen just wanting a certain quarterback for the system. Maybe he's longing for the days of Gardner Minshew, and he really wanted to get back to that. And then I think the other part of it is just the trust that was lost last year with Anthony Richardson because of how bad of a season it was.
Well, Jake, I like the fact that you say it was Shane Steichen, because the coach is putting his job on the line to get what he wants. To me, he chose reliability over risk. He chose experience over excitability. And I loved your basketball reference. I was thinking the same way. I was thinking with Anthony Richardson, it's like Michael Jordan being that point guard. When he comes down the court, he's probably going to be the one taking a shot. It's going to be a highlight version of whatever he does. It's going to be excitable and everything. But then when I look at Daniel Jones, I think of John Stockton, a distributor. Someone who's going to get the ball where it needs to go, someone who is going to be reliable, running the system the way it's supposed to be, the way the coach wants it, the way the coach sees it in his eyes, and how it should be. And I think that, putting the ball in Jones' hands means that the rest of the team has to really step up their game. It means that the receivers, because it's just going to be like a system. Let's move the ball down the field in a systematic way. It means the receiver is going to have to get more yards after catch. They're going to have to fight for extra yards. The running backs are going to have to, grind out those extra yards. And the focus is going to be make first downs, make first downs, make first downs. There may not be a lot of down the field shots. I'm sure we're going to get a handful, but it's going to be a systematic process. It may be boring to some people, but if you win, it's not so boring.
Yeah, one thing I will say to that, though, is a lot of defenses around the NFL have instituted the bend don't break philosophy.
Yeah.
Right? Now, bend don't break, the way it operates is if we make the offense play more plays, odds are a negative play will happen or a turnover will happen, because it's hard to sustain success over the course of 10 to 15 plays per drive. Yeah. So again, when you're banking on this being your quarterback, you're banking on limiting those mistakes so little and taking away a lot of the explosive element that can turn a 10-play drive into a 3-play drive or a 4-play drive. I think that you are really, really betting on your process being good here, not only from your coach to scheme guys open, but from your offensive line to consistently block at a high level, that your quarterback is going to consistently get the ball out of his hands when he needs to, and on your receivers having the right timing in their routes, making catches when they are open, and even winning a few contested catch balls. So if we look at this Colts team last year, when they had the injuries on the O-line, it was not a good pass blocking offensive line. We look at Shane Steichen's system, they had some times where guys were just not open, and there were a lot of, just plays that just didn't make sense. And then receivers, I think receivers are good here, but we have a couple on this team who had some mistakes last year. So again, you're betting on all those guys taking a big step forward when you're making this change at quarterback. So again, a lot of it is Shane Steichen believing in this, but again, you have to be very, very correct, or you're going to fall right into that bend, don't break trap that a lot of defenses want you to fall into, where it's like, look, one sack and that whole drive is done, and you have to be perfect, or at least you have to be positive on every single play. And that's something that's really hard to do in today's defense, in today's NFL.
It's good that Jonathan Taylor is there. I think the best thing that can happen for them is him being around 17 games, honestly.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it's almost like, 2 years ago, they made the bet on Richardson to sort of lift everybody, or just a new quarterback in general to sort of lift everybody else up. And now it's almost like more than them betting on Jones, it's them betting on Pittman and Downs and Warren and the rest of this group to lift up a middling veteran NFL quarterback. It's almost like their approach. And guys, this is maybe a topic for a different show. This is kind of my frustration. They're just making it up as they go along. The Colts, they make a plan. This is the Colts of the last 10 years. They make a plan. The plan fails and they're scrambling and they're just trying to go to the next thing. And they tell you one thing one week and then the next thing happens the next week and then they're telling you the next thing. And it's just, I can understand the fan frustration. Look, let's forget for a second whether you're an AR guy or you're a Jones guy. We've got those people in the comments right now that are going at each other's throats, right? I think the main frustration with Colts fans, guys, is that there's never any direction here because they just don't seem to have any handle at all on what they're doing. It's always, let's try this now. And let's throw this against the wall and see if it sticks. And I say that while understanding that Shane Steichen was pretty consistent this offseason in what he was looking for in his starting quarterback, and Jones checks more of those boxes than Richardson does. But I do think that this whole let's change this approach, let's change that approach, and they're going forwards, they're going backwards, and they keep hitting the undo button over and over again. I think that lends to a lot of frustration.
No, I agree, Derek, because if your whole philosophy now is Shane can get guys open, we have the talent around him. I mean, Jonathan Taylor's been here since 2020, right? A top tier running back in the league. Michael Pittman Jr. has been here since 2020. Alec Pierce since 2021. A lot of these guys have been here, right? So if your whole philosophy was we just need a distributor who can get the ball to these guys in space, Shane will get them open. Why did you ever draft Anthony Richardson in 2020? Why was that your draft pick? And I'm serious. I say this as someone who wanted the Colts to draft Richardson because I saw the upside and I wanted to take that swing for the fences. But if this is what you think you needed, why did you take Richardson? You could have just gone out and got Gardner Minshew. Could have just been your guy. Could have saved that draft. You could have taken a player in the top 4 that wasn't a quarterback and gone with Gardner Minshew and said, you know what? This is what we need a quarterback. So I'm with you, Derek. It does feel very much like a quick pivot where it's like, oh, no, this is what we always wanted. It's like you can't be mentioning training camp completion percentage to me right now as a big factor when you took the guy who completed 50% in college. Clearly, completion percentage wasn't your end-all, be-all 2 years ago. And now all of a sudden what they do in training camp with completion percentage is the most important thing to you. I'm not buying it. I know it's a lot of coach speak here, but be consistent with your message and just try to stay true to, or just acknowledge when things change instead of being yeah, this is what we always valued. No, it's not. It's not at all what you always valued.
Yeah. So,
well, I think the Colts fans are going through what most of the league goes through. You either have that guy at quarterback or you don't have that guy. And for the longest time, the Colts were blessed. You had Peyton Manning for I don't know how many years. You had Andrew Luck for how many years, and now they're just trying to find that guy that they can build the organization around. Kansas City got lucky with Mahomes. The New England Patriots, there's a whole generation that watched Brady play for how many years, but most teams don't have that guy. And so it's always a struggle to try to find that guy. But I will say this. I think that, benching, well, I shouldn't say benching, but making Daniel Jones the starter sends another message to the locker room that, look, if you are not a competent player by year 3 in our system, then we're done with you. And I'm not saying that Anthony Richardson is done, But for someone to be drafted, fourth pick in the draft, you would think would have a lot longer leash. But I think it sends a message to the rest of the team. Look, we can stick with you for maybe a couple years. By the third year, if you're not showing progress, you're not making plays, we can just go get another rookie. So I think that guys in the locker room will see, that as probably the message, where he has Anthony has a 5-year contract or a 4-year contract with an option. So he's still going to be under contract. There's still a chance for him to maybe get the job next year. But when the coach said, no, this decision is made for the season, it makes me think that his time may be done, but you just have to wait and see. I did like the fact that he was very positive in the things he said to the media, and he will have to work harder at taking those mental reps because Daniel Jones is going to get most of the physical reps, and taking mental reps means you got to study a little bit harder. And you got to, at night, sit in bed and visualize, okay, it's too deep. I got one guy coming off the corner. What am I going to do? And visualize that stuff. But you have to do it mentally so that when you get in the game and it happens, oh, I've already seen this before. I know how I'm going to react.
I do think it was a bit cryptic that he said, I think the quote was, I'm an Indianapolis Colt right now. And I thought to myself, that was an interesting choice of words. But I'm glad that you said that, Alan, because that bridges us to our next topic. We know what this decision means for 2025. What does it mean for Anthony Richardson's future? And if he's still here in Indianapolis in 2026 and beyond? That's next when the Colts Squad Show returns. This portion of the show brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me and the entire Colts Squad Show are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. I'll not be drafting and stashing Anthony Richardson late like I did on last year's team. That, I was the Chris Ballard of my team's draft, that's for sure. Nor will I be taking Daniel Jones. I'm not going to do that. But you might talk me into a late flyer on A.D. Mitchell, and I'm certainly still interested in Jonathan Taylor and Tyler Warren. Regardless, I can't wait to get into the draft room with my college buddies in the Yahoo Fantasy Draft, and something that we've done for more than 20 years. In fact, to celebrate 28 years, can you believe it, of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season right around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. And if you're more into the classics, you can always, of course, still play in the head-to-head private leagues or join a public league as well. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoo.com/LockedOnNFL. And welcome back. It's the Colts Squad Show. Thanks so much for joining us on the Locked On Network. I'm Derek Schultz alongside former NFLer Alan Pinkett and current Locked On Colts talkers Jake Arthur and Zach Hicks, talking all about QB1 and the decision for the Colts. And, guys, we talked about some of the locker room comments, and I wanted to touch on some of that, but just to kind of close the book as far as the decision that was made, it just seems to have, and we can maybe talk about the process and sort of get into all of that and everything that failed here. But to me, and maybe this is a simplistic way of viewing it because my mind is simple, so that's how it works. I feel like there's just been a real failure of understanding for everybody. I think there was a failure in understanding what they were signing up for the Colts when they took him. I think they knew he was raw. I don't think they had any idea that it was going to be like this. I think there was a failure of understanding of Anthony Richardson, of what it took to succeed at this level and develop and become a big-time, promising NFL starter, fulfill some of the promise that and potential that people saw in him. At the end of the day, to me, that's kind of what I'm left with feeling like here. Like, a lot of people are blaming, well, the Colts didn't give him a chance and they should have done this, or Anthony's lazy and whatever else. I really just feel like there's equal blame to go around for everybody here. I think this was a failure on many people's parts. And I think if you gave even Shane Steichen, who's a proud guy, I think if you gave him truth serum, I think he'd admit that, he failed, or Chris Ballard, I failed with this, or Anthony, I failed with this. There's enough failure to go around. I know that doesn't make anybody feel better, but that's kind of my main takeaway from where we sit right now, Jake.
I agree. I think everyone had a lot of optimism about how this thing was going to go, because the Colts, that entire 2023 offseason, we asked them over and over and over, what are you looking for in a quarterback? Because we knew they were going to get a quarterback early in that draft. And oddly enough, they kept telling us they wanted someone who basically they were accurate and obsessed with their craft. Well, Anthony Richardson just had the least accurate season in Colts franchise history in year 2 and had to be benched because his work habits had dipped to the point where his play was suffering on the field. So what are we doing here? Basically, it just goes to show like a complete lack of a detailed plan, I think, when they drafted him. A guy who only had the 13 college starts, who obviously was very, very raw. And you needed to teach him how to be a quarterback on and off the field. But it feels like their only solution to that was more reps. And then he got injured, which took away those rep opportunities. And so we're just kind of to the point now where it's like year 3. And I'm sorry, but if you're a quarterback for your team and you're drafted in the top 5 and your team doesn't trust you to be starting by year 3, it's over. Like, I think he will fulfill the purpose of being the backup this year. Maybe if they need to throw a Hail Mary and try and rescue their season because they're still within playoff range, but Jones just isn't cutting it. Like I mentioned to Zach earlier, like if you're looking at like week 11 or 12 or something, and it's still a possibility that you can give the team a shot in the arm with Richardson, maybe. But yeah, he's going to be under contract, but how do you go into next year with him being in the conversation for the starting role? It needs to be done.
You don't.
Yeah. Like he probably needs a change of scenery. The Colts just need to start over and form a real plan with a real quarterback. And we don't even know who's going to be making those decisions, because like how likely does it seem that both Ballard and Steichen are the ones pulling these strings here? So yeah, it's unfortunately Anthony wasn't ready. The Colts weren't prepared to get him ready. And it just didn't work out here at this point. Like the damage has already been done. I think it's very, very clear. It's not to say he can't eventually go on and be successful somewhere, but the Colts don't seem to have a plan on how to make it work here.
Yeah, and I think another part of this too is when people are talking about how this didn't work out and pointing fingers and all that, taking a quarterback in the first round, regardless of their college career, you have like a 25% chance of getting a long-term starter when you do that. Now, factor in that the Colts weren't looking for a long-term starter. They were looking for a guy that could compete with Mahomes and Allen. You're probably looking at a 5% chance. Then you add in the outlier that is Anthony Richardson. We were talking about an historic outlier, a guy that you're betting on with some of the worst stats and experience ever coming to the NFL, hitting for you. This is like an under 1% chance of this thing clicking, but it was worth the shot because in the AFC, Pat Mahomes has been to the AFC Championship game every year of his career. You have to go through Mahomes' Chiefs at some point if you ever want to win in this league. So you need to throw some Hail Marys to have a chance to compete with them. It didn't work out for the Colts. That's fine. I still respect the process. I would take the shot all over again, even if I knew it had very little chance of working, because I'd rather take that shot than continually trot out the Gardner Minshew's and the Daniel Jones, squeak into the playoffs just to earn the honor to get blown out in round 1 of the playoffs. I want to compete for something more than that. And I think that's the standard that Colts fans who grew up in the Peyton Manning era of Indianapolis should hold this team to. The goal should be Super Bowls. The goal should not be 9-8, 10-7, and feel good about ourselves at the end of the day because we sold some tickets and made people happy. But I digress from all that conversation there. When it comes to Anthony Richardson going forward with this team, again, if you don't start him from year 1 or from day 1, it's fine to have this long-term developmental path where he's not getting on the field, but maybe every now and then, but for the most part, not getting on the field. But when you give him something, when you give him that starting job and then yank it away from him like they did last year with the Joe Flacco situation, and then you have him a chance to compete to earn it back, and he loses that, you're telling him that he's not good enough for your standard, which he very well might not be right now. But that's very, very different than, like, I see the Colts, and I know Chris Ballard's going to try to spin it this way, where it's like, we're just rectifying the mistake that we made in year one, where we shouldn't have started him out the gate. So this is a chance for him to sit and learn, and we still like him a lot. It's different. It's different. It's not the same thing, obviously. Not starting from the day one is very different from being benched and losing a quarterback battle. The confidence is shook. The trust is shook between the two sides there. And it would take a full-blown miracle at this point for him to work out in Indy. Luckily for his sake, he's still very young. We've seen players like him in terms of youth just grow up in the league, hit their 28, 29, 30-year-old season, and find new life with other teams. We've seen it recently with the Sam Darnolds, and heck, we're trying to bank on Daniel Jones beating that with the Colts. So there is always chances in this league, especially when you're a former first-round pick. But I do think it's unfortunately just done in Indianapolis. Like, I don't see any way for this to be rectified outside of, look, Jones has missed 25% of his career starts due to injuries at this point. There's a chance another injury could happen this year. And then Richardson's really got to shine if he gets that opportunity again, because he is just one play away, like Shane Steichen said. But outside of that, I think the trust is just broken between him and Shane Steichen. I don't think the Colts really have much interest there in turning him into their franchise quarterback, because they just don't think it's going to happen. So I think it's more realistic that if he finds any kind of path in the NFL, it's going to be on another team with another coaching staff.
Well, I feel the frustration, and I know you're getting lots of comments. The thing I go to is, how frustrated do you think that locker room is right now? As a player going through this, they want stability at quarterback. It's the most important position in football. They are looking for someone that can lead them to victories. And I think that everyone was excited. I know all the players were excited about the potential that Anthony Richardson has. And for the guys in the locker room, they're going to have favorites too. They're going to wish. There's going to be a group of guys that want Anthony Richardson to succeed. And there's going to be some that say, hey, look, I just want to win games. And what's going to probably happen is, can this Daniel Jones help us win games? Because that's really all that matters. Can he help us win games? And what can we do as players to win games? Because, the noise outside the locker room is pretty loud. It's going to be loud inside the locker room too. So I just feel like a lot of the guys are just saying, I'm going to have to step up my game in order for this thing to work. And I know that if I have a bad year, they're going to hold me accountable for that. So I've got to step my game up to make this thing work. And I think with Daniel Jones, if he has success, they win some games, all the bad vibes go away. All of them do. Can this guy help us win games? And that's the bottom line.
Yeah, and I think there's a little bit of a deja vu, here we go again type thing, especially for some of the guys that have been here through all of it, like Nelson and really Buckner and Pittman Jr. and guys, Franklin, guys like that who have been through Wentz and Ryan and the Flacco benching last year and now this, and it's just like, what are we even doing? But, kind of going back to our conversation in the first segment about hitting the undo button over and over again. But to Jake's point, it would have been so much easier, guys, for them to have just gone with Richardson. And then if it didn't work, you go to Jones after that point. I just don't think you make this decision. The Colts are going to sell it how they're going to sell it, right? And Bauer's going to say, well, he needed more time. Well, yeah, guess what? It's not day one. It's day 730. Okay. So if he's still not ready at day 730, then that's a big problem. That's how they're going to sell it. I know exactly how they're going to do it. But at the end of the day, you don't make this decision and have it be easily undoable. They know that. You can't just walk in and be like, all right, after Daniel Jones struggles for a couple of weeks, late September, man, maybe we should go back to Richardson.
They did it last year with Flacco. They did,
They did,
so maybe they will.
And I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, right? Because they just make it up as they go along. How about
Right.
this? I can't imagine them doing that.
Right.
I can't imagine. And Steichen was banging the table about how this is the decision that they're going to stick with and all of that. So that's what I just felt like there was a real finality with that in the locker room and what the players had to say and what Richardson had to say and what Steichen had to say. And everybody was tiptoeing around it, but you could just tell from the body language. I mean, Alan, you've been in locker rooms. Jake, you and Zach, you cover these teams. When the vibes are telling you what everybody's seeing. You can see it on the faces, and that's what I saw on Tuesday when they made that decision.
Oh, the vibes were off in the locker room. Like, because I remember we experienced it last year with the ping-ponging of quarterbacks, and I still very much get the sense that these guys were ready to roll with Anthony. Like Quentin, it seemed like he was over it. It seemed like Pitt was over it. A.D. Mitchell didn't seem enthused about it. Like, these guys, like, they just want to win. They like, at the end of the day, they want a quarterback that's going to lead them to wins. But I think switching quarterbacks yet again and trying a new formula yet again after they just all could probably agree Anthony had the best summer of his career, they're like, all right, well, geez, let's try this something else again, I guess. Like, and then if it doesn't work, you'll probably make another switch, even though Shane insisted there's no leash on Daniel. Just like he did with Joe Flacco, like Zach said. It only took 2 weeks of Joe Flacco to yank that leash. But, yeah, the messaging isn't clear from the team either. And I don't know if that extends, like, from their messaging to its players or not either. Because, I mean, I think we all mostly saw that kind of expose from Zach Kiefer and James Boyd in The Athletic last year, where the anonymous veteran player kind of put him on blast a little bit, where he's like, what's the plan? What are we doing? Like, it never seems like we're going in the same direction. And I mean, wins are going to be the only thing that's going to cure this thing. Cause right now it's not a laughing stock. It's just shocking how much change happens with this one team. Like, rewind 6-7 years ago, guys. Like, did you think all of these players would have played for the Colts? Like Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Daniel Jones, like any quarterback who has held any sort of significance in the NFL has found their way through the Colts at some point in some manner. Like, it's just so crazy. And I think the players are very much over it until wins start coming. Because, like, some of these guys are definitely contributing to the high effort and getting wins. But let's not forget that a big part of last year was also weeding out the guys who had become complacent and were just kind of over it and had checked out as well. So I think it's just going to take wins to get everything moving in the right direction. But the vibes right now, I don't feel are incredibly high, at least when it comes to the quarterback position.
Does anybody want to guess, Daniel Jones, when he starts the first game, he will be the blank number quarterback to have started a game for the Colts since Andrew Luck retired. Does anybody want to guess what number that is?
It's probably like 11th,
well,
right?
Anthony's
like
the
10th.
only one to go back to back.
10th or 11th. Yeah, I would say because
he is the 11th different starting quarterback.
Right, because we're forgetting the Brian Hoyer game,
Nick Foles,
Sam Ellinger.
Yeah,
Daniel Jones coming here, and then soon Riley Leonard will get his chance too. Don't worry, guys. Don't worry. And then after that, Jason Bean, baby. Here we go. We're going for it.
My dad was texting me. He was like, "Who's this guy in the fourth quarter of the preseason game? This Bean guy." I'm like, "Dad, relax. All right."
We all fall in love in the fourth quarter of the preseason.
This is the new Bean Town.
That's right.
Calling it.
Well, Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard, they might have been thinking about self-preservation when they made this decision, but next we're going to talk about why they may have put even more pressure on themselves by picking Daniel Jones. Stick around. It's the Colts Squad Show. This portion of the show brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in the game while your friends are getting sunburned on the beach. Don't know what to play? Check out FanDuel's daily promotions to dip your toe in the water. That app always makes it fun. New wagers to play in games that you might not have previously been watching. That's the best part about FanDuel. It makes every game feel like I'm part of the action just by putting some action on the game. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. New customers, again, $5, get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. All you got to do is head to the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we're back on the Colts Squad Show. Thanks so much for joining us alongside Alan Pinkett, Jake Arthur, and Zach Hicks. I am Derek Schultz. I am an everydayer, just like many of you are. So I'm always listening to Locked On Colts, and I was doing so before they called me and asked me about this show where I jumped at the opportunity. And so I'm always listening to Jake and Zach, mostly because I also don't want to repeat everything that you guys just said when we're doing the show the next day. But I thought that Jake brought up a really interesting argument about, picking Jones and what this means, because I think the default was, oh, well, he's safe. So because Jones is safe, Steichen and Ballard and the Brain Trust, they're thinking we're more likely to save our jobs. But guys, I think when you kind of look at, where the Colts could go this season, let's say hypothetically they had picked Anthony Richardson and they had gone 8-9 again. And you say 8-9, man, that's the same thing. Yeah, but 8-9, and he started every game, right? This is a big reach on the hypothetical because we're talking about just stay with me. 8-9, and he started every game. Then you go in the meeting with Carly Ursay and the daughters, and you're trying to sell yourself on saving your job. I'm saying, hey, he started every game and he made a lot of progress, and look at all the improvement, and I'm putting in all the tape. Richardson's got highlight reel stuff. You could put in this throw or that throw, and you could show like these little piecemeal things, and you could sell it. If they do the same thing with Daniel Jones and they go 8-9, there's no way you can sell that, right? You can't sell that as progress. You can't sell that as everything else. So I thought it was interesting, Jake, like this almost makes it playoffs or bust, doesn't it? Because anything less than that, and Jones is in a contract year, and you've probably given up on Richardson, and you got nothing to sell at that point.
No, it's go for broke at this point. Like you mentioned with Richardson, if the vibes are high exiting the season and he has made a lot of progress and like people aren't checked out on him, you can sell that to Carly as, look, our arrow is pointing up going into next year. Anthony just took real positive steps. That's a quarterback. Like we've maybe found the guy for real. But even if Daniel gets them to the playoffs, a wild card spot or whatever, what's the likelihood that you're really investing in him in 26 and beyond? Probably not likely, unless he's another one-year bridge because you're drafting one of these guys in what should be a pretty decent class next year. So if you make a move like this, you're making it, number one, Shane billed it as, he gives us the best chance to win. I am making the best decision for the Indianapolis Colts in 2025. All right, well, you got to get to the playoffs, because what you're saying, again, kind of leading back to the top of the show, what I was mentioning, you're banking on yourself now. You're no longer putting it on Anthony Richardson's shoulders to help lead you there. You are banking on your system and Daniel Jones, this quarterback that you guys went out and picked this offseason to execute your offense to get wins and lead you into the playoffs. If that fails, what is the redeeming? What redeems you to come back? I can't find it. I mean, context is everything. We don't know what the vibes will look like at the end of the year. I always said with Zach, if they're gonna miss the playoffs and Shane and or Chris save their job somehow, there has to be something that had to happen that everyone's like, yeah, I get it. A major injury at the end that cost them week 18 or something. But the arrow has to be pointing up at the end. But that was with Anthony as the quarterback. I don't know how you sell that if it's Jones and you miss the playoffs because of a decision you made.
Yeah. Well, last year the Colts were, combined between the two quarterbacks, one of the worst quarterback teams in football last year. And they were still a running back dropping the ball at the goal line away from making the playoffs. And we're not going to go too much into that because it's still painful to think about in that Denver Broncos game. But yeah, they were right on the door of making the playoffs last year with atrocious quarterback play, right? And when you're making this move to Daniel Jones, you're essentially saying, like, if we get the Daniel Jones level quarterback play here with this team, that's good enough to get us over the hump, especially when you factor in they brought in Charvarius Ward and Cameron Bynum. I mean, you're expecting that 29th overall defense to at least bump up a little bit when you do those moves there. So yeah, making the move to Daniel Jones is saying that we think this team should be in the playoffs this year. And to me, I mean, aside from Jones getting hurt, I don't see any excuse that you can make to Carly Ursay to sell them on the future if you're not in the playoffs. You know, again, you're saying that our weapons are good enough, my scheme is good enough. I need a quarterback who can be like a coach's son on the field and just get the ball to the slant route when I call an open slant route. That is essentially what they are saying. And if that doesn't lead to more success this season, I don't know what the selling point is, because you can't really sell on the future. Like the beauty of having the Anthony Richardson thing was you had this playoff ready roster, but a quarterback that was nowhere near ready along with the roster. So any kind of shortcoming you had with Anthony Richardson, you could always say, oh, because the quarterback's not ready yet. We're bringing him along. We're bringing him along, so don't worry about the results right now. But now when you insert a 28-year-old quarterback who is on his second chance in the NFL, there's no more we're just bringing this guy along. Jones is going to be what you need him to be. And if what you need him to be is not good enough to make the playoffs, I don't know what your argument is here, especially in year 3 as a head coach and dang, what, year 9 as a general manager. You know, you don't get, I mean, I know Ballard's had a long time here in Indianapolis, but you don't get forever to fix this thing. So yeah, I'm with you. I think the pressure is really on. And honestly, to a degree, I respect that. You know, I respect it just to pull the Band-Aid off and say, you know what, playoffs are bust this year. And I'm happy to ride it out and see what happens, because I do think this is a pretty good roster. I like the coaching as well. I know everyone hates Shane Steichen right now, but I still think he's a pretty good offensive coach. I love Lou Anarumo as a defensive coach. I think they got the dogs on defense, even with the Justin Wally injury. That still upsets me to this day. But I think this can be a playoff team if Jones can just operate the offense the way they want it operated. But yeah, there's really no excuse that they don't make the playoffs this year.
Well, yeah, I'll come at it this way. Does Daniel Jones have any urgency to make the playoffs? Now, you got to think about him in this situation. He was with the Giants and got cut midseason, you know, and so you're hoping for like a Sam Darnold type of performance, get on the second team, redeem yourself so that you can go make the big payday. Daniel Jones is betting on himself too, not just Steichen betting that, okay, I got a system guy who can complete the pass the way I want it to be completed, who can run the offense the way I need it to be. And that should be enough. But Daniel Jones has to also have that urgency to say, hey, look, I'm better than what they thought I was in New York. I've got something to prove. Can he be that leader that makes the team forget about Anthony Richardson? Can he be the one that takes command of the football team and runs an offense that is going to, score at will, be a ball control offense, help out the defense by having long sustained drives? Because I think that's what Shane Steichen is looking for.
Yeah.
Will he have that urgency? And I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So that's my angle on it.
Yeah, I'm just fascinated, guys, because, and look, it's August, so we're going to have a lot of stuff that happens in between all of this. But if these scenarios were to play out, even this pie in the sky type scenario where they win 10 games with Daniel Jones and let's say they lose a competitive game in the wild card round, right? Are you still keeping this brain trust around to make the next decision? Like, does suddenly Chris Ballard enter year 10 and get to pick the next quarterback because you went to the wild card? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just trying to, in my mind, I'm trying to think of what the end game could possibly be, even in the positive situation, like the ceiling for the 2025 Colts. And I'm still thinking to myself, it just feels like a franchise that needs a reset.
Right. No, I agree with you. I mean, look, at the end of the day, this is just my perspective here, and people can disagree. But at the end of the day, in the AFC, man, you're going through 3 MVPs in their prime at quarterback to try to get to a Super Bowl. And Joe Burrow is probably the next guy up getting that MVP probably this year, just because I guess MVP is everybody gets a trophy nowadays with MVP. So, I mean, yeah, you have to go through Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes, and Joe Burrow if you want to make it to the Super Bowl. I don't think you can get through those guys with just adequate. Who's been getting through Pat Mahomes? The only person to get through Pat Mahomes in his career as a starter are Tom Brady, a top 2 quarterback to ever play, top 1 quarterback to ever play, and Joe Burrow when Pat Mahomes had the worst half of his life, and they still only beat them by 3. So like, if you want to have bigger aspirations than just having a fun time in the NFL, and you want to win a Super Bowl, I still think you got to swing for the fences at quarterback. And a lot of that does come to luck. I mean, again, 25% of these quarterbacks in the NFL become long-term starters, and that's not even counting the guys who can go toe-to-toe with the Mahomeses and the Josh Allens and stuff. I mean, look at Washington. Finally looks like they have their guy, and it took them 30-something years to get there to have their guy at quarterback. So, like, yeah, it's a difficult thing, and it takes a lot of striking out to get there, but I still want to have goals of winning Super Bowls instead of goals of being a first-round playoff exit or a fringe playoff team. So I don't know if I trust this front office to be the ones that can guide us that direction. I would, again, I just want to compete for Super Bowls. And I mean, how many more decades do I need to see of Chris Ballard to say I don't think he can be the guy who can get us there? Shane Steichen, I know it's only year 3 for him. So, but you were hired by a decade-long general manager. So, yeah, I want to swing higher than just early playoff exit. And if you have a quarterback like Daniel Jones, like, I'm not even talking bad about Daniel Jones here, but a quarterback like Daniel Jones, you have to have like the best roster in football around him to have the chance to go lose to Pat Mahomes, like Jimmy Garoppolo had with the San Francisco 49ers, like Jalen Hurts had with the Philadelphia Eagles when they lost to them. It took an even better roster this past year with the Eagles to finally beat the Pat Mahomes in the Super Bowl. So, I just rather would swing for the fences, and I'm fine striking out until you do, but I just don't think these half measures are good enough, especially in the picture of the AFC. I mean, again, like 7 of the top 10 quarterbacks in football are in the AFC. You have a high standard in this conference. And I just yeah, you can maybe make the playoffs, but I want more than just the playoffs.
By no means can they be allowed to pick the next quarterback. They've had the chance year after year after year, whether it's the draft or free agency. And it takes a certain level of aggression to go get the right guy too. If I'm not mistaken, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes were both traded up for in the draft. Mm-hmm. But also, Chris Ballard has been out after Andrew Luck. He's been able to get quarterbacks who worked with the head coach before, was a former MVP in Matt Ryan. These are not wild swings at quarterbacks. They are logical moves where the Colts are a logical destination for these guys already. Even with Anthony Richardson, whether this is true or not, but I've heard CJ Stroud was incredibly high on their list. They didn't go get him. They were in love with Brock Bowers and Malik Neighbors a couple years ago. They didn't trade out. They didn't land the trade to go up and get him. I mean, they attempted to. Even with Tyler Warren, they didn't trade up to make sure they got him. This regime is about survival and not thriving. Like Zach said, it's got to be about more than just getting to the spot. That's great if you get to the playoffs, but what's next? Whenever you become a perennial playoff team, they're immediately going to start asking you, okay, well, when are you going to start winning some of these playoff games? You have got to be aggressive, because let's say the Colts pick around 10 or 12 next year. This does look like a pretty good draft class next year coming into it. Who's to say they're going to pick the right guy? You know what I mean? They're not going to have the number 1 pick. So they're not going to have the clear best guy fall on their laps. I think this is too important of a decision. You do not get that many opportunities to get a really good quarterback within a 5-year span. They can't be the ones to make this decision again. Now, to their credit, if Daniel Jones is awesome this year and has at least a Sam Darnold type year and they want to sign him again, great. But guess what? The Vikings didn't even re-sign Sam Darnold, and he's the guy you're hoping that he becomes. So they've had too many chances at it. It's time for somebody else to pick this next quarterback.
So it does end up being playoffs or bust. They have to make the playoffs to, as you guys say, keep their jobs. And it's hard to find that one guy. I remember, being at Green Bay, for their training camp in '93, and that's the first year Brett Favre actually got the starting nod. And the decision that Mike Holmgren and that staff made is, from the head coach to the janitor, we're putting in a system that's going to support this quarterback and make sure he has all the resources he needs to be successful. And they got kind of lucky, because Brett was able to play for an awful long time. And to be able to build on, a guy that's already been cut and, been with another team, what is the can you do that? So I'm anxious to see how Daniel Jones is going to react in this situation. Um, and I think that Anthony Richardson, as long as he stays positive, and it's hard to do, but as long as he stays positive and waits for that opportunity, and like you say, Zach, it might not come till week 11, but as long as he stays positive and then goes in and makes plays, then there could be a happy ending for everybody. But right now, I know everybody's feeling kind of down because it was going to be exciting to have Anthony Richardson just with the potential upside. Now, with Daniel Jones, can you get a little bit more out of him? But like I said, I think that's incumbent upon the other players to step their game up to make Daniel Jones look that much better.
Yeah, and I know we're taking this long here, and Derek's sweating a little bit because we're running the segment a bit long. But one thing I just want to say, because I know how the comments have been the last couple of days.
Yeah.
Look, Anthony Richardson was probably not going to work out this year either way as a starter. Like, us being down about this season has nothing to do with them starting Jones over Richardson. It's just the fact that Jones is starting for a team that we want to have higher aspirations for. Again, if Richardson's starting, we still probably are not this excited about them. It's just
but there's that little chance, right?
The little chance might be 0.1% chance. But look, with Jones, he'll be okay. It's just he's a 28-year-old guy that's on his third team, on his second chance, really. It's probably not going to work out. Like, even these guys who have had success, the Geno Smiths, the Sam Darnolds, where are those guys taking you? They're not taking you to a Super Bowl. So again, the young quarterback is the way. I mean, the Vikings let Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones go so they could go to the young quarterback because everyone knows the young quarterback is the route. So yeah, it's just what it is at this point. I wanted Anthony Richardson to work out. I don't think he is going to in Indy, and I don't think there was probably much of a chance even if he started this year. But just taking Richardson out of the equation. If the Colts tried to sell us all year on Daniel Jones being the savior for us, I don't know how many people would actually buy that.
Well, neither Daniel Jones nor Anthony Richardson are going to play on Saturday. In fact, the entire Colts 2 deep won't play against Cincinnati, but that doesn't make that game meaningless for some individual players. To conclude the show in the final minutes, we're going to tell you who has jobs on the line next when the Colts Squad Show returns for a final time. And we're back for a final time here on the Colts Squad Show. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks to all the live YouTube commenters as well. I haven't jumped into the Lions Den here in a little bit, but I see the little red number up there on the top right-hand corner. It looks like a lot of people talking about a lot of different things, so we appreciate you guys joining us right here on the Locked On Colts Network. Guys, wanted to just kind of quickly talk about this preseason finale and some guys that still maybe can use the last dress rehearsal here and a chance to prove their worth on this team. I think, Zach, particularly the cornerbacks, right? I mean, Samuel Womack, Alex Johnson, Jonathan Edwards, Chris Lamons. You're not going to be able to keep all of them. So I don't know how much Saturday's game factors into that, but I think showing out there may be able to, break some ties.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan Edwards, Sam Womack, and Chris Lamons, for instance, all had one extra roster spot taken away from them this past week when Xavier Howard got signed. A guy coming off the street took one of the spots that you were fighting for. So now it makes this competition so much more dire for all of these guys. So yeah, I think a good performance on Saturday is huge for these guys to make that final push to be that last corner. Like, give these coaches a reason to keep you around. Johnson did it against the Ravens. Lamons did it this past week, and Edwards has done it in a lot of the practices that we've seen where he's gotten reps with the first team. So you want to go off on just a high note and let these coaches know that you can be that reliable sixth corner for them, especially when two of the guys ahead of you are still dealing with hamstring injuries and not fully back yet. And then another guy's a 32-year-old who just came off the street. Like, you want to let these coaches know that you're always available. So like, especially for a player like Jonathan Edwards, who's on a very cheap contract, only 24 years old, you want to go out there and have a really big game and say, look, hey, I'm 6'2", 200 pounds, run a 4.4 flat. You can invest in me. I'm worth keeping around. I think it's huge for a guy like, especially like Edwards, to have a huge game on Saturday.
You're on mute, Jake.
No, Jake.
Oh, the typical Jake.
Had to do it. See, I try to be courteous and keep myself on mute while you guys are talking. No, but I agree. Especially with Jalen Jones and Juju Brents getting back to practice, Kenny Moore getting back to practice this week, it makes it so they don't have to have those guys on the roster now because their dogs are kind of getting back and they're getting healthier. So yeah, I think that's going to be a really entertaining battle. I want to see if Daniel Scott plays. If Daniel Scott doesn't play, then that's your fourth safety right there, because they had to have another guy step up in Hunter Wooler's place since Wooler had the Liz Frank and is out. And then I think this backup nose tackle spot's got to go to the death of the preseason, doesn't it? I mean, I think Tim Smith showing that he's got some special playmaking last week certainly helped, because he not only punched the ball out, but like he ripped past his blocker to get off of that and then back downfield to the play to punch the ball out. So Tim Smith, Eric Johnson, Josh Tupou, I think that's another one that still needs to be settled as well.
Is it all defense? Is there anybody offensively, Alan, that jumps out to you, or anybody else back-end roster guys?
I was going to go to the offensive side. I prefer that side. But I look at all the tight ends, and I'm wondering how many tight ends are they going to carry, and who is going to be out of a job. And I think we've talked about it before, but, we talk about Jelani Woods and the fact that, he might be expendable because he's catching passes from Riley Leonard and from Bean. He's not catching passes from Daniel Jones, but can he make one last stand this weekend and not only, try to secure himself a spot on this team, but the other 31 teams? I think he has to go into the game thinking, number one, I want to make this roster. But number two, I need a big blowout game, to be able to show people that I can still play. And look, guys, I tell you what, players love that kind of challenge. They love the aspect of it's do or die in this game. It's not pressure at all. It's I got to go out, play the best game of my life. And, it may be dull for the fans to watch the last preseason game, but when you think your livelihood is on the line, man, you're going to go out and try and play as hard as you can. So I expect to see all those tight ends, try to make an all-world play. And just players up and down the roster. Yes, on the depth chart, ones and twos aren't playing, but we don't want to forget any of these names because we'll probably see a lot of them in December playing because of the attrition of the game. But the guys whose, their livelihoods on the line, I expect them to be excited and come out, blazing, trying to make a play. And that's, it's going to be a comfortable spot for them.
Yeah, and one more thing I want to add too is I think we're going to learn even more about this team just by who's not playing in this game than who is actually playing. Because if you have a healthy player that is not playing in this game, like Jake mentioned, to Daniel Scott, if Daniel Scott's held out of this game because Hunter Wooler's hurt, and Scott's now your fourth safety, that tells us everything we need to know about how they view Daniel Scott. Luke Tenuta is another guy who comes to mind because it has the inside track as their 9th offensive lineman, now their 4th overall offensive tackle. Does he play in this game? Will Mallory, does Will Mallory play? He probably does, but if Will Mallory does not play and Jelani Woods does, that might tell us everything we need to know about how they view that position. So I think we'll learn a ton about just what this team views on players, just on who's actually not playing.
This is such a good weekend for the Riley Leonard fans.
Yes, and the Jason Bean fans.
Right. Well, they're either going to play a full quarter or a full half each. We'll ask Shane tomorrow what the plan is, but it's going to just be those two. So you're going to get everything you wanted other than them starting.
Yeah, let's just, Alan will send the Notre Dame band down. We'll do victory clog after Leonard touchdowns, and then Schrader hits the extra point, and then it's victory march right after that. Bang. We'll just make it an all Notre Dame preseason.
There we go.
Go ahead and take care of that. That's when we'll be back with you guys on the Locked On Colts Squad Show. We'll have game recaps following each and every Colts game, even the games like what we're going to have coming up here on Saturday. So we'll be back with you right after that one. And Jake will join us after he's done with his post-game duties for our boots/boat shoes on the ground there in Cincinnati. But until then, follow us on socials and at Locked On Colts, and we'll see you next time right here on the Colts Squad Show.